In this last video of kind of caricatures of bad managers, we're going to talk about the worst kind, at least in my opinion, which is the dictator type, the authoritarian type. Yeah, I think these are managers that do the worst damage to people. Yeah, the people who shout, the people who are dismiss ideas quickly, and people usually who have like kind of their favorites and people who they don't like. You know, they kind of divide and conquer kind of, you know, people, they like the people who are like them and they don't like people who are not like them. They like people who agree with them and they don't like people who don't agree with them. Unfortunately, there are many of these types of managers on the field and in HQs. And really, it's because they don't know any better. Yeah, I mean, there's no justification for aggressive management styles. For just because you say, okay, we've no time to waste, the population are in need, that doesn't justify you shouting at your staff, or it doesn't justify your manager shouting at you. Okay, these people are usually harsh and intolerant when errors are committed, and tend to see people either as very black and white. No, they're very black and white, competent or incompetent, good, bad. Not like we said in the other video about surviving incompetence. Yeah, they tend to be people who like kind of they kind of like act like as if they're in the military commanders. You know? They like to issue orders, they like to issue instructions, and as I said, you know, they're very black and white. They tend to work with people who are their friends, no, who they trust. They're suspicious of people they don't know. They don't usually have an evolved communication style. It's usually quite rawr, you know, aggressive. There's not much range. They're not very adaptive. The same communication style they use with their team, the same one they'll use with the authorities and, you know what I mean, and the communities. They have usually neutral, tense, and then irritable or aggressive, and often shout. It's true that there are less of these now because it's less acceptable than there were, but when I started out, there was a lot of these. You know, the shouter was kind of like, they got very high up as well. Managers like this dictator mode cause a lot of stress and burnout and fear in the teams that they manage. And often the people are managing them. People become afraid of them. And when people are afraid of somebody, they become afraid of making mistakes because the consequences are bad. When you're afraid of somebody in the workplace, particularly if it's your manager, you're afraid of their reaction, you work in tension. So you make more mistakes. It's logical. Yeah, people don't work well when they're afraid, when they're tense, yeah, when they're watching their bosses every facial move just to kind of gauge if they're near to an explosion or not. These types of managers that are kind of this dictator mode, this commander mode also, will usually listen very little or only listen to the chosen few and will impose their decisions on the team with little or no integration of other ideas. As I said before, they usually have their favorites. So they listen to their favorites and they will disregard whoever they consider not to be aligned with them. So usually they're bad listeners and just like issue orders and instructions. They don't negotiate goals, they don't negotiate priorities, they don't negotiate deadlines. They won't give much support either, and they will give more support again to their friendly camp than to who they consider to not be their friends. You will be expected to carry out the order as if you were a soldier receiving an order from a commander. And if you don't do it the way they want it, you will receive a irritable or angry reaction. The reason there are so many of these in humanitarian work still, despite modern times and these types of managers not being accepted, is because they are rarely fired, despite hierarchy or human resources knowing exactly how they manage. Their value in knowledge or experience or expertise seems to outweigh their really bad managerial style and seems to outweigh for the organization who doesn't fire them the damage they do to other people. But they have no problem firing other people, and usually they're the worst in terms of firing people. So that's not very good for retention, because they fire the people, as I said before, who are not in their camp of friends. Yeah, and everybody else will be incompetent. And if you are the type of person who offers up divergent opinions, then you will be at risk. These people operate like this often because they are narcissistic or just extremely arrogant and think they know everything. And also because they have a volatile personality. But these types of people are precisely the types of people that get into high up positions in organizations, particularly if they're men. And sometimes when they're women, they have integrated these more masculine attributes of aggressivity or aggressiveness. Yeah, and sometimes they rise high because they're protected by their friendly camp, let's say. My advice when you come into contact with one of these commander or dictator or authoritarian type managers is to leave. I know that sounds drastic, but if you're not in their approved camp, you will have a difficult time. They will not listen to you, you will not be able to grow under them, and if they don't like you, your life will be made a misery and you will be always living in fear of their reaction. I had a boss once who shouted at me every single time we spoke on the telephone. Every single time. And it was horrible. And I couldn't leave. If you can't leave, as was my case, for money reasons, whatever you do, don't complain to that boss. Because it will just get worse. You saying to them, I don't like when you shout at me, won't make any difference. If they're abusive and it's really affecting you, then you must complain above them. Yeah, but prepare yourself well. With the dictator commander style, there is not much you can do. You just have to try to provoke them as little as possible and never try to undermine them or enter into direct conflict with them. It won't get you anywhere and will just bring you more misery. Here, it's about self-preservation. Try to carry out the instructions as well as possible. Observe how they function. Observe what are the things that cause their most aggressive reactions. How do they calm down? When are they the calmest? What is their triggers? Yeah. So again, extracting yourself from the situation and observing how they function will give you information about how to minimize, let's say, their negative impact on you if you can't leave. And then as soon as you can leave or change managers, then do that. In all of these characters and types of bad bosses that I've explained, your smartest move always is to observe the person and learn how they function, because no two will function the same way. That is the key to success. Managing their flaws, managing their incompetence, yeah, so that it has the least impact on you. That is the goal here of upwardly managing. Identifying what kind of manager, identifying what kind of incompetence you're dealing with, and then observing it to see how it manifests. It's a little bit like threat management, but of the managerial kind.